everyone. Welcome to episode 80 of the Penciled In Podcast. We had a little electricity adventure here. Today we are talking with Dave Gaskin, the artist extraordinaire. And it would appear he has a brain, if I remember from your Facebook feed, which I'd like to get into a little bit later. That was super interesting.
Sure, yeah.
Welcome to the show, and welcome to Jenny.
Thank you very much.
For stepping in for Lindsey. Lindsey is super sick, so get well quick, Lindsey. So we'll get right back on it, seeing as we kind of covered all the bases previously. Jenny, I'll let you go.
Okay. No, I had been saying that I was so glad to be able to be in the interview with Dave. I had seen his work, and when I saw that you were going to be having him on the show, I was like, wow, it would be fun to talk to him. And so I'm so glad, I get to sit on the show with Dave. I've admired your art for a long time. So yeah, thank you for being in Penciled In Podcast. But we would love to know how you got started in illustration and especially in sketch cards. And we want to know all about your methods and everything.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you very much for those kind words. That's a really nice, kind introduction. And I appreciate that a lot. I've been drawing, as I think most guests have said, over the last 79 episodes. They've been drawing all their life, and I fall into that category. It's the one thing that I've always done. It's the one thing that I can always remember doing. And, touch wood, it's something I plan to do for as long as I'm able. It was a hobby for a very, very long time. And I'm of an age where I learned to draw before the internet. It was a very kind of personal thing and something that I kind of kept to myself and kept quite private. But then once the internet appeared and you could share your work online and interact with other artists and get feedback from people, kind of changed everything really for a lot of us. And so I learned to draw when I was younger, and I would always draw rather than paint. I still can't paint. I've tried. It's one of those things I try to do every few years. Can I paint? Let's find out. No, still can't do it.
You can bring out the comments. Your work is stunning. Your work is just gorgeous. There are going to be some examples while we're talking.
Thank you. Yeah, I learned to draw like most people did with pencils, crayons, pencils, that sort of thing on paper. And I have very vivid memories. In the UK, we used to have a thing called, at school, if it was raining, which it's the UK, so it happened quite frequently, we would have to stay indoors, and they'd bring out boxes of stuff to keep us entertained, and I would always be the one that picked out the paper and the pencils, and I would go over there and I would really, really enjoy drawing. So I just kind of chipped away at it. I studied art at school. I did quite well, and then when I moved into college, so sort of 16 to 18 years old, I found movies, and that kind of took over from the art. Unfortunately, I got obsessed with watching films, and I'm still obsessed with watching films, but I've managed to find time to fit the drawing in as well. And so I just kind of bumbled along. I didn't really have a plan. I've never been that ambitious. I've never really set myself goals as such, because the way I see it is, if I set myself a goal and I don't achieve it, I see it as a personal failure, and that's the last thing I want, mostly pencil graphite work is what I started with. And it wasn't until I was invited to my first sketch card set in 2017 that I even contemplated using color. I was purely black and white. And
do you remember what that was? What was your first set?
Yeah. The first set was it was for a UK trading card company, actually, a little outfit called Unstoppable Cards. Oh. And it was for Terminator 2.
Oh, cool.
And I love Terminator 2, so it was a no-brainer, really. But the invitation did say the cards, ideally need to be in color. And so I thought, well, how do I do this? And so I just received this, envelope or box, however they arrived, with these blank cards in. I looked at them and thought, not really sure what I'm doing here. So it was that first set was a bit of a, thrown in at the deep end sort of deal. I was so used to working in black and white. I knew ideally I needed to work in color. Fortunately, I'd been experimenting working at sketch card size the sort of 2 or 3 years previous. If we roll back to mid 2000s, a little website that popped up at that point was called DeviantArt. And in those days, DeviantArt was a very, very small website. So if you uploaded work to it, you got a lot of attention and lots of interaction. Now it's kind of become a little bit too diluted, and there's so many people on there. It's very difficult to, find other people easily. But back then it was quite small. And that was my first experience of sharing my work with the world. I'd scan in some of the stuff that I'd drawn in the 90s and get all these really lovely comments, and it kind of spurred me on to keep going. But one of the turning points was finding Mark Raats, the South African illustrator who now lives in Australia. He's done work for Lucasfilm, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching this will know who Mark is. He's very, very popular. He's a lovely guy. And he shared some of his work from the Indiana Jones Heritage trading card set, which I think was maybe 2008, somewhere around there. And that was the point where I discovered sketch cards. That was my first introduction to them. And so then I didn't really pay any more mind to it. I was like, oh, that's nice. Mark's doing some nice work over there. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing over here. But then as the years went on, I had a conversation with Mark at one point, and he said, if you want to, we can get you in touch with the guys who organize this, and we can see if we can get you onto a Star Wars set. And I mean, you probably can't see, but there's a lot of Star Wars stuff behind me. There's a lot of toys going on. So I was a big fan of Star Wars. I grew up with the movies, as many did in the 80s, waiting for it to come on at Christmas because we didn't have a VHS player. DVDs were a long way away. And so we had to wait for it to come around at Christmas to watch it on TV. So when he said, there are Star Wars trading cards and sketch cards that you can do, I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. But yeah, Terminator 2 arrived first. And so I was working on Terminator 2, doing them in black and white, Copic, because I picked up some Copics. I kind of, through the grapevine and looking to see what other artists were doing, I became aware quite quickly that perhaps Copics were the way to go. And so I just bought a box of grey ones. I've still got them, I refill them every now and again. But I started with the grey ones, and because I was moving from working in black and white with graphite to moving into markers in black and white, it made the transition a little bit easier. And so, that first set was kind of my training ground. And barely had I lifted my pen from the last card that I got an invite from Topps to work on Masterwork 2017.
Wow.
And then it just went, the scared level just went up a little bit because, Masterwork has those lovely thick cards to work on. It was my first set of Star Wars stuff. And it was nerve-wracking to begin with, but those nerves quickly subsided. I think mainly from talking to other artists. There's a Facebook group that all the artists are in, and it was good to see that I wasn't the only person who was quite new. I think I think around that time they'd kind of invited a load of new people.
It's funny you mention that, because I found a lot of the sketch card artists are really helpful. If you have a question, it seems like you can go to those groups and they're always willing.
It's a really good source of knowledge, and I think I learned that even before working on sketch cards. If you find artists whose work you like, approach them. A bit like I did with Mark. He was very approachable. It's easy to put some higher end artists on a pedestal and think they'll never want to talk to me. But you never know. And once I joined DeviantArt, and I was getting people asking me questions. How did you do that? And I'm thinking, wow, they want to know how I've done something. This is weird. And so that became one of the things that I try and do, is to try and advise people, and guide people and offer the advice that I was given early on, and also share some of the stuff that I had to work out for myself, before the internet and before there were lots of people to talk to about this one thing. I didn't really have any artist friends, so all of the work that I was getting through and things that I was learning, I kind of just picked up for myself. And so I often think back when I see there's a new person joining or there's somebody new to art, I think, right, if they want to learn, then I'm happy to answer their questions. And I think that's one thing I often tell the new artists, be a sponge. See yourself as a knowledge sponge. You might think you know a lot already, but there will always be so much more to learn. Even for those of us who've been doing it a long time, there is always something new to learn and something new to try, and developing, I think, is kind of key. So yeah, it's been fun.
For sure. It never ends. The learning thing just never ends.
Yeah. But I think you have to accept that.
Yeah. No, I always wonder, how did we do this before the internet? Because I mean, it's the feedback's important, and then like getting those tips and, learning what that artist is using, what kind of materials they have. It's like, well, you couldn't do that before the internet. So, it's so nice that we have that in those Facebook, to be able to learn.
Absolutely. And I started my own YouTube channel, not that I'm trying to promote it in any way. But I set it up, I think it was about 2007. YouTube was still really new at that point. And in the sort of mid to late 2000s, I taught myself to paint digitally in Photoshop. Oh, I can paint, but only in Photoshop. And so I just recorded, I found some software that would record the screen. Yeah. And so I did a session on a digital painting, recorded it, sped it up a little bit, stuck some music on the top and put it onto YouTube. And they're still there. I mean, it's 16 years later. There's an old Hellboy that I did, and I did a Wolfman. I think with Hellboy, because there was rumor of a new film coming out, I think there was a rumor of a Hellboy 3. I happened to upload these videos just at the right time, and I think I got a lot of accidental traffic. People looking for news about the new Hellboy, and they found my videos. So tens of thousands of views for something that I look back at now and I'm a little bit embarrassed by, but I won't remove them. It's all part of the journey.
Are you still adding content?
I'm sorry?
Are you still adding content? I mean, are you still?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the very early stuff that I was uploading was just an experiment, really, to see what people would think of these digital painting videos. I don't do that anymore. Because with digital painting, much like my traditional artwork, I veered towards realism. And I found with Photoshop, you can almost get to the proper photorealism level. And more often than not, the standard comment would be, oh, it looks just like a photo, eliminating the many hours of work that I'd spent painstakingly creating it. So I decided to leave digital behind and go back to paper. So now my content is, it's mostly time-lapse videos of sketch cards, and I tend to only upload the coloring stage simply because it would be almost impossible for me to record the sketching and inking stage because I have my face so close to the card. You wouldn't be able to see anything on the camera. You'd just see the back of my head. So it tends to be just the coloring stages, and I find you see more progress more quickly when it's the coloring stage than you do at the inking stage. And then what I've done even more recently is record some commentaries to put over the top. So I'll upload the 2.5 minute time lapse of the coloring stage, and then a little bit later I'll sit down and I'll slow the video so it's maybe 10 minutes, and then I'll just chat for 10 minutes and try and explain what I'm doing and try and put my thought process out there. And
what is your channel?
I tend to get a bit distracted.
Well,
I tend to get a bit distracted, but yeah, my username I think on YouTube is Biker Scout 2006, because I joined in 2006 and somebody else had already got the Biker Scout name. I haven't worked out how to change it, so I've just left it at that. But if you head to, I think there's a link on my website actually. So if you go to davegaskin.com, there's a link on my website. It takes you to all the social medias.
That's great. Cool. Good. So now, so you said you work digitally, and of course your sketch card work. Which do you like more? I mean, or is it you're passionate about both? Do you have one that you prefer?
Oh, it's definitely traditional. That's how I learned. And I've found when you have conversations with people about art, especially people who aren't artists themselves, it's a lot easier to explain how you've done something when they can see the marks. They can. That's why I try not to make everything perfect these days, because if it looks too much like a photo, I'll be getting the same comments I got from the digital work. Oh, this looks just like a photo. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely, my heart lies with paper, absolutely. And I think the only reason I won't work digitally now is because my computer is so old, it can't run Photoshop properly,
So
and I don't want to
you
have
don't
to
you
buy
have
a
an
new one.
iPad or anything, or do
I
you?
do. I do have an iPad, yeah.
Okay.
And I've thought, should I check out Procreate like a lot of other people seem to be doing with an Apple Pencil? And but no, I think it's because I spent so much money on Copics. I think I need to I need to stay with those for a little while.
Jeez,
And
yeah.
you draw something digitally, you haven't got a tangible physical thing that you can send to someone.
Yeah.
Whereas with a sketch card, and sketch cards in particular, I used to start even just an A4 piece, which isn't, an 8 by 10, really not that big. I'd start working on it, but if I didn't finish it within a weekend, it would just be unfinished forever. I've got a box in the wardrobe that's just full of all these unfinished graphite drawings going back literally decades. But with sketch cards, because they're so small, it's like I can finish them in 1 or 2 sittings at the most. So they kind of appeal to how my brain, how much attention I can pay to one thing.
Yeah, for
How do
sure.
you
Oh,
manage
wow.
your time when you have a full-time job and
Yeah.
into that's quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean that was tricky to begin with, and in the early days, and certainly the first sets I was doing for Tops, I have my full-time job working for Cambridge University, as you mentioned, and I'm an illustrator for them, which is quite good. It's not drawing Star Wars, unfortunately. I wish it was, but they wouldn't let me. So that job is kind of creative in a way. I'm kind of fortunate that I have a creatively sort of linked job, and then at the weekend and during free time, I can get onto the creative stuff that I really, really love to do. But yeah, it was difficult in the early days because I was not great at time management, and that's one of the things that you have to be aware of when you accept these invites. It's very, very easy to think, yes, I'll do 100 cards, and then you find you have 7 days to do them, and then you think, I made a bad
Oops.
decision here. So yeah, I would use some holiday and book some days off work just so that I could dedicate it to getting the sets done, which perhaps wasn't the best way to do it, really. But I couldn't fit them all in at the weekend, because I tend to take a bit longer. I wish I could, whip out a card in half an hour and it's done. But I'm one of those that needs to spend a good 2-3 hours per card.
Okay. I was going to ask you, how long start to finish does it usually take you?
Yeah. I mean, once it's inked, I think once I've sketched it and once it's inked, now that I'm practiced at colouring, the colouring stage tends to come quite quickly. But I'm not one of those that has like a set palette that I just use every time I'm doing kind of skin tones and that. I look at each reference photo as a completely unique thing, and I will try and match. That's just the way I do it. It's probably not the greatest way to do it. I try and match the colours that are in that photo. So again, and that's kind of something that I've managed to speed up. I know my Copic colours now. It's
Cool.
very easy to buy them all, but then you've got to work out which ones work for shadows and which ones work good for lips and all sorts of stuff. So, but yeah, a good couple of hours, I would say, per card.
That's
There
crazy
was
because
one set.
I was going to say your detail, like there's a Catwoman that you did, and then your Gandalf and Sauron. There you go.
That one. Yeah. There she is.
It's just a couple of hours. That's just crazy. That's the original.
Here. Yeah, that's the original one. Yeah, it's still with me. Nobody wants it so far. I know there are a few Catwoman collectors, Ronnie Crowther. I don't know if I'm sure you guys know Ronnie. He's another artist, and he's also a Catwoman collector. I think he's got a couple of Catwomans that I've done before in his collection. He shared a photo recently, so I know that he wants that one. So we'll see where it ends up.
Well, now that you've shown him, maybe that'll tantalize him a bit more, and he'll make good and buy that puppy from you. So
you never know. But yeah, you mentioned as well there was a Gandalf that I did. It was for the Cryptozoic Middle Earth set, which, and I've mentioned it on my own channel, but because I did a couple of time lapse videos, I did a Golem time lapse and a Saruman time lapse. I was very excited to work on that set when the invite came. It was one I thought Star Wars was the one that I wanted, and that was top of my list. But then I'd done maybe 6 or 7 Star Wars sets by that point, and it was during the start of the pandemic, and so I was really clinging on to these little glimmers of hope. And an invite came through from Cryptozoic to work on Earth, and I'm from Birmingham, and J.R.R. Tolkien, when he was young, he lived in Birmingham. And so when I was at secondary school, I became aware that literally just down the road from where we were at school were some of the locations that he lived near when he was young, and they actually inspired some of the locations in Middle Earth. So there'd always been that little connection in the back of my mind to Tolkien.
Cool.
So when this Middle Earth invite came through, I was like, yep, sign me up.
I was thinking through your stuff, and I was thinking you're either a huge Tolkien fan or you're a Star Wars guy. But apparently it seems like maybe your Tolkien stuff is winning a little bit out of the Star Wars fans in here.
I think, Star Wars is, the personal link to Star Wars is just childhood. And as you can see, I have quite a strong affinity to things from childhood. I'm surrounded.
Now, see, I didn't tell you, those aren't toys, those are reference, okay? Yeah. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Pure reference, because you need those things.
I'm going to use that excuse from now on. Thank you for that, Jenny.
See, and then over here, if you buy those kind of things, a lot of times you can use them as tax deductions. They're write-offable when you're an artist. So that's a reference.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, some of the higher end figures, some of the NECA figures, they are so realistic. I've got the set of turtles, and they're only sort of 6-7 inches tall, but the detail on them is fantastic. So yeah, Star Wars is the childhood link, and then Tolkien is the hometown link.
Yeah.
Although we've lived in Cambridge for 20 years, I'm still very attached to Birmingham. Family still live in Birmingham, and so Star Wars has kind of been the quantity element of my sketch card work, but I think Middle Earth was the quality. And I think, although we drew them in 2020, the quality of those cards, I'm still super proud of them, because just the time, the timing as well. It was 2020, so it was a tough time for everyone. So I'm still surprised that I was able to kick out the quality of stuff that I could.
Crazy.
But yeah.
How many on that set did you do?
I think I just went for 40 on that. I think that was the minimum, possibly. So I did 40, and then I think I had 4 artist returns, which were all snapped up very quickly. And then I did some extra work for Cryptozoic last year. They asked me to do some sketchographs for, I think it was Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is not a set that I worked on originally, but they needed some extra sketchographs done. So I agreed to do that in exchange for some more Middle Earth APs, which came in quite handy. So I then was able to do a couple more Middle Earth cards. I thought my time on that set was over. My APs were all done. They were sent off to their new homes. And then I got a couple of extras. So there was a Gandalf, and I did that at the start of the year. And yeah, the process on that was slightly different, because I just went with color pencil rather than going with Copic. And they came out really, really nicely. I was super happy with them.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know that. So now Ingrid, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Ingrid and I talk a lot about art supplies. That's like, one of our things, you always try new things. Are you pretty much just into Copics, or do you like trying new things, or, new art supplies, or you see something and you have to buy it, or?
Yeah, oh yeah, very much. I think before I had settled on a set of pens, be it markers or inking pens. Um, I was one of those that would buy one or two of different brands and just see how they worked and whether I
Yeah.
gelled with them. Before I got the Copics, I went with the Pro markers, which were more readily available in the UK. So, of a lunchtime, we would pop into Cambridge city centre and go to the art shop, and I'd buy 3 or 4 pens, a week, and just slowly build up this collection. So my art supplies cupboard is quite vast, but
That's awesome.
it's one of those quite common questions, isn't it? And newer artists who haven't found the materials that they're happiest using, they want to know what you are using, and it'll be what white ink pen are you using, what
But I
pencils are
mean,
you using over
I mean,
here, and
really, be serious, be honest. Even when you find the tools that you're like, oh my God, I love this. I can't use anything else. You still want to try something
Yeah.
else.
oh yeah, it's much like learning, isn't it? It just never ends. You just carry on buying art supplies until there's no space.
Speaking of learning, I want to get back to this, but before I forget, I saw a post on your Facebook feed where you had signed up for a study on the brain.
Oh yes, yeah. That was
I mean, that's really cool.
I
I think it kind of relates to this because if I'm not mistaken, it was to kind of study how the brain learns. So that kind of ties to what we're doing.
I back in 2012, October 2012, we were due to fly to Australia. My wife's brother and his family had moved over there, and so we were heading out to visit them. And the week before we were due to fly, I ended up at the doctor's and ended up being diagnosed with kidney disease, polycystic kidney disease. And it's something that I live with, and it's fine. And I'm doing good. And when I have visits to the hospital, which I have to have, twice a year, at one point, one of the visits, they said, "Would you be willing to sign up for, allow us to give your details to our research division so that they can, get in touch and try and get you on board with research projects and that sort of thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. If I can help other people, let's do it." And this was actually the first project I signed up to take part in, this medical study. And yeah, like you're saying, Ingrid, it was to study how the brain learns. And there were several sort of online sessions, quite intense online sessions, where you're involving lots of symbols and trying to figure out what's going to be the next one in the sequence. And I'm not normally too good at that sort of thing, but they went okay. And then the last thing they did was to do an MRI scan of the brain for 2 hours. If anyone's ever been in an MRI machine, they're not the most pleasant of environments to spend any sort of time in, but I agreed to spend 2 hours in there. Don't ask me why. And yeah, so I had to stay completely still, and they were doing the symbols thing, and I had a little control pad that I could control with my fingers, kind of, off to the side. And so it was a fascinating experience. But as I posted on Facebook, I was just pleased to see that I had a brain, really.
There is something up there. That's awesome. No, I think
there
it's
is,
really cool that you got into that. Really fascinating things. So, especially being right-brained.
Are you going to get any feedback on that? I mean, it's fascinating. How does the brain learn?
Yeah.
Is there a reason why we creative types are creative types? Is there a reason for that? I don't know. Does your brain light up like a Christmas tree differently when you work, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was strange because I was in this thing for 2 hours, and then I got out, and I was expecting them to say, "Oh, great, your brain looks fantastic. Oh, it was doing this, it was doing these things," and they literally told me nothing. They were just like, "Right, thanks very much, away you go." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I think I did say, I hope the information you've gathered might be useful in some way, and I think they said, it's going to be about 6 months before they have any kind of data that they've looked at and done their investigative stuff with. So we'll see what happens from that. But yeah, fun times.
Wow. Yeah, I think that was really cool. But Cool.
Uh,
So now what, for illustration at Cambridge, like what do you do? Like you work kind of like, is it graphics sort of things or?
Yeah, so I've worked for the university for about 20 years now. I can't really talk too much about the job because everything that I do is confidential, but it's all done.
Ooh.
It's all digital. It's all digital work. So it's all done on Adobe Illustrator,
Okay.
which I had never used when I started this job. And at the interview, as well as the standard interview questions and a few little tasks, I was sat down at a computer and they put Illustrator on the screen and they said, please, can you draw these diagrams? And I just looked at it and thought, this may not go well. Fortunately, I already knew how to use Photoshop. I taught myself how to use Photoshop. And because they're two bits of software made by the same company, I sat and looked at the screen and thought, well, this kind of looks familiar. And so I kind of figured out how to do a few things just on the fly, and I must have done something right because I'm still there. But yeah, it's generally black and white line art, and across lots of different topics. There'll be biological cross sections and geographical maps and all sorts of stuff. So it's very varied. It's one of those jobs where no 2 days are the same. Which is why I'm still there. I think if it was the same thing day in day out, I don't know if I would have stuck it out for so long. But
that would be hard.
Much like the sketch cards, you keep it interesting.
Yeah. So the people that you work with, are they like, wow, you do sketch cards? That's really cool. Or do you not tell people that you work with? I do that.
I mean, to manage my time, because I work from home now. Since the pandemic, we all had to work from home, and they've been very good and allowed some of us to continue to work from home for the most part. But when we were in the office all together, I would often, much like when I was a child, I would spend my lunchtime drawing, except rather than scribbling, really mediocre stuff at the age of 6, I was there working on sketch cards during my lunch break. And
you're pushing up your deadline. Yeah.
Yeah. And, quite a few people, as I found over the years, if people find out you're an artist, if you meet someone for the first time and they find out you're an artist or a creative of any kind, really, it sparks a conversation. And so I was finding that lots of people were coming. I don't know if they'd heard it from someone else, but Dave's drawing something. You should go and see what he's doing. So I'd just get people and I'd be aware of somebody just leaning over my shoulder to see what I'm doing, and they don't want to interrupt me. They're like, "Oh, what's that?" So yeah, it's been really cool, and there are quite a few people I work with who, like me, had never heard of sketch cards, had no idea what they were. Now they know because I've had lots of conversations with them about it, and I was in the office just on Tuesday actually, and with a good friend, and he was asking if I was still doing sketch cards, and I said, well, yeah, I am. I'm not doing quite as many sets as I used to, just because the day job has kept me very, very busy recently. So I've been very choosy as to what I do. Not that I've stepped away from sets completely, because I have some blanks for a certain ancient Egypt set, which I think Ingrid might know something about.
That's
and
cool.
I've had a couple of invites from another company as well, which I don't know whether I'm allowed to talk about, because I've not heard a single person in any of the groups mention these invites that have come through. So I don't know if it's like a one-man sketch card show or what's going on. So I'm kind of keeping that close to my chest. But I'm stepping away from Star Wars, I think, and focusing on the companies that offer a more generous deadline, so that when time is tight, you have got time to dedicate. Because I've always seen my pack inserts as part of my my portfolio, really. A collector may not have a clue who I am. Their first introduction to my work may be a card that they pull from a pack, and I always try to make sure that all of my pack inserts are of the quality that I would be happy to find. They're not quite AP quality, because I don't think I could realistically spend that much time working on every single card, but yeah, I try to make sure that they're all ones I would be happy to find myself.
Are there any licenses that you would like to work on that you haven't tried yet?
I mean, yeah, I think Indiana Jones was one, because that was the first set that I saw examples of that sparked that little flame in my mind. Sketch cards, you should do that at some point. Seeing, you know, the Indiana Jones cards and then later the Star Wars ones. But I think Indiana Jones now is just off the table completely. Since the Disney takeover, I don't think they're going to be, you know, if they were going to do it, they would have done it to coincide with the latest film. So I think Indiana Jones is, not to say I can't draw him on personal cards and whatnot, but yeah, I've not really got a list. I mean, Back to the Future is my favorite film of all time.
Oh, wow.
So
That's cool.
if an invite came through for Back to the Future, you'd have to do something pretty severe to stop me from working on that. So yeah, but yeah, and it's the surprising sets, you know, it's like Middle Earth. I wouldn't have even contemplated. Yeah, you could work on a Middle Earth card drawing Lord of the Rings characters, and I didn't think it would spark that much of a reaction that getting the invite did. So yeah, again, I'm not really setting, I really wish I could work on a set for this. I'll just see what comes my way, which, to be honest, is how my artistic journey has gone all the way through. I've just kind of gone down this path, and someone's put up a signpost here, and I've just kind of gone down there and see what's happening, and you know, so yeah.
Is there anything own you'd like to work on as well? Do you have any like personal either your?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've bought so many blanks and had so many personal blank cards printed. I tend to just draw things that on those that, you know, a lot of 80s movies, a lot of 90s movies. So yeah, if I'm not working on commissions, which I tend to do quite rarely, actually, it will, you know, I will look ahead to the weekend a few days earlier and be like, right, what am I doing at the weekend? Do I have a few hours spare? Could I do a commission? And then I'll, you know, post in one of the groups. I've got one commission slot. So it's quite rare for me to post something like that. So generally, if I draw at the weekend, it will be drawing something of my own choice. And then I'll pop it up on Etsy, or I'll stick it in one of the Facebook groups and see if anybody wants it. I'm all about just trying to share the work with as many people as want it, really. And if it brings them a little bit of joy and brings them a smile, then that's my work is done.
Oh, that's awesome. So, I mean, I know with work and then your sketch card work and everything, do you have time just to draw for your own enjoyment? Like, do you keep a personal sketchbook, or do you doodle?
Yeah, or? I've actually more recently made sure that I do that, because Good. I don't want, you know, this hobby of art that I've always enjoyed for many decades. I don't want it to feel like too much like work, because then that kind of sucks a little bit of the enjoyment out of it, or at least for me anyway. And so absolutely, I don't tend to work much bigger very often, but I have, you know, a lot of the Strathmore toned paper pads, the toned grey and the toned tan. I really like working on those with just like one colour and a white pencil, and just doodle a little bit there. There's an app that I enjoy called, it used to be called Sketchy, it's now called Museum, and you set up a profile, you upload photos of your face, and a lot of the other users of the app are all artists, and they can see like a bank of images that people have uploaded, and if they like the photo, they'll use it for a reference. And then once you've done that, you upload the artwork into the app, and the person who uploaded the photo gets a little notification, you inspired so and so to, and then so that's a great little like separate community, because it's just regular people uploading selfies basically. And the pressure is somewhat less trying to get a likeness than it is, you know, drawing the famous faces that we have to draw on the cards. So I tend to fall back on that if I feel like I just want to, you know, try and do something just for fun, just try and keep it loose. Don't worry too much about likeness. You know, I'm not going to spend hours trying to get the corner of the eye in the right position. It's not really going to matter. And so that's another really nice community to be a part of as well.
That's really
I've never heard of that.
That's cool. Really interesting that you're trying to keep a fun part to your creative. You are actually an illustrator for a day job. Art
Yeah,
is really
I think that because although the day job is creative, it's obviously quite different to this sort of thing. So it's quite easy to separate the two. You know, I'll finish work on a Friday evening and then be like, right, what am I going to work on? Do I want to work on something straight away? Do I literally want to go upstairs and start, you know, getting the Copics out and doing something personal, or should I wait for the weekend? But yeah, and doing personal stuff and doing cards, it's been very grounding, and I find it very grounding at times. If I've had a stressful week, you know, I will lose myself for a couple of hours working on a face, because faces are my thing. They always have been. You know, I learned to draw by picking a face from a magazine and just trying to draw it, and then over and over and over again over the years got better and better and better. So I stuck with what I know basically, but I would like to branch out and try other things. But yeah, it's very much become a grounding thing for me, and so I want to keep it fun and I want to keep it interesting so that it doesn't feel like like work and a chore, you know.
Yeah.
crazy.
Now, oh, I'm sorry. What?
No, please go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, you've got so many activities focused on art. You know, you've got your job, the illustration, you've got your sketch cards. Is there something, and you talk about your passion for movies. Is there something else that, like a hobby that you like to do that's just something for you, something that you really like that's outside of art, or is it just pretty much art?
Yeah, it's literally outside. I love nature. My wife and I often, you know, we're quite lucky. We've got quite a few areas quite close by that you can just get away from the hubbub of. Not that we're in a city, because we live in quite a small village outside of Cambridge, but it's nice to just get out into the open and, you know, spend a few hours out in nature. I love nothing more, to be honest, and we haven't done it for a while, but we're going to book an afternoon off in the week here and there just to have a little breather from the you know, the routine of the day job and then drawing at the weekend. And I'm not very sporty, so I don't do sports. I don't mind watching sports, but yeah, I mean,
Are you a football guy?
I'm not. No, I'm not. I feel like I should be, being from England, but no, I've never been into it. It's one of those things. I was never any good at it at school, so I have no interest in watching people who are good at it.
I understand that.
Travel?
But then I'm quite happy to watch golf, and I'm quite happy to watch, you know, tennis, and I don't think I'm going to be any good at either of those either. So who knows?
Do you have any interest in travel and exploring your areas or your country or elsewhere? Oops.
Yeah.
Did I lose?
Sorry, I missed the start of that one.
I'm sorry. I think the connection is still a little weird. Do you have any interest in traveling at all?
Oh yeah, I mean we like I mentioned earlier, we went to Australia about 10 years ago, which I think is the furthest I've ever been, the longest flight I've ever been on. And right now we have no plans to leave the UK. Flights don't really appeal anymore. You know, time feels so much more precious in where we are now. And so we've got a couple of weeks off in September, and there's so much although the UK is comparatively minuscule compared to, you know, the States, there's a lot of it that we've not seen. So, and it's because it's so small, it's quite easy to get to most places fairly quickly in the car. We haven't got to go to an airport or anything. But yeah, we've been to the States a few times and been to Canada as well. We love Canada so much. We've been there a couple of times, and I would happily move to Canada. Really, really enjoyed it there. So yeah, it's we'll see where we decide to go next. But I think for the short to medium term, it's going to be not very far away from home.
It's cool too. Do you have an interest in tech that connects to your art, seeing as you work digitally and all that? Do you enjoy that? Do you like it?
I mean, because my computer's so old, I'm kind of stuck on quite an old version of Photoshop, and I feel like I'm not quite as up to speed with the tech as I used to be. I'm at the point now where I'm feeling a little bit outpaced at the speed with which technology is advancing. You know, I'm still stuck in in the mid 2000s a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk at the moment about AI and that sort of thing, and it's not something that I'm too concerned about at the moment. As an artist who works traditionally with traditional media on paper, tangible stuff, I worry more, and I do have quite a lot of friends who are digital artists and rely on it as, that it's their sole income. Quite a few of them have made that leap that at some point I would like to do, leave that full-time job, make art the full-time job. But those who are working digitally, I think the challenge for them is going to be, coping with the advancements in AI. And I think people who aren't artists may not understand how critical the position we're in is now. It's the point where
think that AI is a threat to our kind of work, or do you think it's something we need to learn to use?
I think it's a threat in certain ways to certain areas of the creative environment, and because everything AI spits out is digital, it's why I think sketch cards aren't really under threat in any way. A computer can't draw on a sketch card, at least not yet anyway. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm worried I've put a seed of an idea out now. Oh, come to regret that in a few years. But no, it's AI seems to have developed very, very quickly. There were really not that long ago images of some of the first AI images that were being produced, and the hands were all really weird. There were numerous extra fingers and digits, and they were all kind of bunched up, but they've kind of smoothed that out now, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it develops. And yeah, I'm kind of glad that I don't work digitally anymore, because I think that is the artistic field that AI is going to encroach the most. So we'll see. I mean, I get the impression that the strikes that are going on at the moment, the writers' strikes and all of that, that's all linked to AI. I think it may need that sort of action to ensure that things aren't steamrolled over by AI and it takes over. I don't think it will, to be honest. I think hopefully most people are aware what has been produced by a human and what has been produced by a computer program. Someone's typed in some code and told it what to create. Not really creating anything, it's just following an instruction. Yeah, I've tried to kind of keep out of the debate, to be honest. And like I say, I don't feel too concerned personally, because I made that decision to stick with pencil on paper, which is something that it just can't do. A computer can't mimic that, I don't think. So
I think you're right on that.
Hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have Jenny, first of all, where can people find your work online if they really want to go check out Dave Gaskin? And
I mean, to be honest, Ingrid, you don't have to search very far, because I'm everywhere. I've spread myself very thinly across social media.
Well, that was something else I wanted to ask is you have embraced social media, evidently, so you're not afraid of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm of that generation that remembers a time before the internet. I remember, the first time I sat at a computer and was told that it was connected to the internet and I could look stuff up, and I just sat there and thought, well, what do I want to... I don't know what I want to look for. But then, yeah, the introduction of all the social media apps, we know them all. Some of them we love to hate and hate to love. Twitter/X, whatever it's going to be called. I think that was one of the early ones that I joined. I think I had a 14-year anniversary on there last year, and I thought, blimey, 14 years.
Did you miss MySpace?
But yeah, I mean, I did use MySpace, yeah, and
I used MySpace, yep.
I didn't have all of the flash, because quite a few people had the pages that took an absolute age to load, didn't they? Because they'd filled it with so many GIFs and the early 2000s equivalent of memes. You just go to them and just sit there waiting for it to load, and it would just take it forever. But yeah, I think DeviantArt was the one that was the game changer for me, because that was art focused, and that's where I was able to share stuff. And it just kind of developed. People were like, right, there's this thing called Facebook that's just started. So I joined that. I think it was 2007, really early on. did the usual thing of connecting with people from school that I hadn't seen for 15 years. But now it's kind of developed into a really useful hub for connecting with like-minded people. And, like we were saying, you find those artists whose work you really like, and you have conversations and really meaningful interactions, and people that I've never met in person but then now I consider really, really good friends. So it's been, as much as we like to deride social media, and there are good reasons to do that, there are also good things that have come from it as well. It really just depends how you use it, I think. And I have to wean myself off every now and again, have a little social media holiday, because it can get a bit overwhelming. But for the most part, I'd say my social media experience has been quite positive, really. So that's why I've embraced it, and posted literally everywhere. I had a Tumblr at one point. Where are we now? We've got Twitter and Facebook, and I think Facebook and Instagram are my two key ones.
Are you on Mastodon?
I'm not. No, I did join Threads. Posted things. Couldn't really. I hadn't much time for Twitter anyway, so I don't really have much time for a platform that's very similar over here. So I'm on there, but I'm not very active. But definitely Facebook and Instagram.
Are you on TikTok?
No. See, that's where I feel I'm too old to go on TikTok. That's one of those where I know it. I know what it is. I'm at that level. I know what it is. I've seen some TikToks. I don't think I'll be joining it myself, but never say never. Who knows? Who knows?
See, the how you work videos for you, I think that would go over so well for you. People watching how you work, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Instagram that has Reels, which are basically, I think, very similar to TikToks, aren't they? So it's that short form. And so I'm still trying to, because I'm just a one-man operation, like so many of us, Or I don't have a social media manager. I do all of this stuff myself. So you could actually spend quite a lot of time investing in, working out how all these things work. So I have experimented with Reels, I have to say, and I've shared a few of them to Facebook because the two things are linked. So that's quite nice. But definitely, trying to work out how to get those slightly longer form videos that I put up on YouTube, condensing those down into something a little bit shorter, the 30 seconds, and seeing how that goes. Because, the one video on YouTube that I put out was, I did it on a spur of a moment. I think it was 2015. It was one Sunday morning. And I thought, I'm gonna record a video, because I get asked about it a lot. How do you get the lightness right in your portraits? And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to record a video, and we'll see how it goes. And I think it's currently on like 20,000 views on YouTube.
Awesome.
Now, if I was a smarter man, I would make more of those. But instead, I just make 10-minute videos of me chatting about sketch cards, and it gets seen 100 times. But I'm quite happy with that. I'm not chasing the views, because with those views and all that extra attention comes the extra pressure, and I don't want to put that on myself. So, we'll see.
I'll be sure to put all the links to your YouTube and all your different social media, so that people can go check you out. I'm gonna go check it out too. I was not aware that you had a YouTube thing.
Actually, all the important links are on davegaskin.com. I think I've got links to all of the social medias on there. So that's a good place to start. And then you'll, get lost wherever you head.
Jenny, do you have, we'll slowly head on out the door before I lose electricity again.
I know, really. I've got an important question for you. We've talked about this one before, and it's really, really important. Cat or dog guy?
I'm sorry?
Cat or dog guy?
Oh, cat or dog guy? No. I think I would be a dog guy.
Okay.
But we have bunnies, so I'm a bunny guy.
Oh, that's awesome. Even cooler. I used to have an Angora rabbit, and I loved him. He thought he was a dog, but okay. Well, that further puts me in the cool people category. So, yay.
Oh, that's good. Oh, you have to have some kind of a pet or animal, or however you wish to say it. Thank you so much for having joined us, Dave. Is there any last
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Do you have any last words that you'd like to share? The internet is really just awful today. My apologies to everyone.
I would recommend checking out some of the previous episodes. I was doing that over the last week just to see who else you've had on, and you've had some fantastic guests. So check out the back catalogue, and yeah, if you find me on social media, wherever it may be, drop me a message, say hi. I like to think I'm always approachable, and I'm happy to answer questions that people have as well. So yeah, be good to see you all.
So great. It was great to chat with you. You were wonderful. Fun to talk with.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
absolutely cool. Wonderful. I hope to have you on again when you discover something new that you're going to be, well, that set that you can't talk about. That would be awesome to hear what that's
about. That would be a good one. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on and share all that. And my
You're welcome.
apologies again
Thanks
to
for having me.
The quality of the internet is just, well, what you're going to do. Okay. Thank you again.